Versatile Mage. Chapter 166 Thunder Attack. If his casting speed was slower than his opponent's, the one who would die in battle would be him if he insisted on trying to cast his spell. Thus, Mofan was driven into a situation where he had to give up forming his Star Atlas, and instead whistled towards his Spirit Wolf. The smart Spirit Wolf immediately understood Mofan's intentions and rushed towards him at lightning speed. As soon as the wolf ran past Mofan, he quickly grabbed onto its long fur before pulling himself onto its back agilely. "Run! Run towards the center, far away from the tornado!" shouted Mofan towards his summoned beast. Without slowing down, the wolf ran as ordered while a dust storm approached quickly from behind. If the Spirit Wolf ran even a little slower, both the wolf and Mofan would be within 10 meters of the tornado and their speed would decrease drastically as it drew them in. With Mofan on its back, the Spirit Wolf continued running away. Fortunately for them, the arena was huge enough, and they could only hope they would be able to shake away the rampaging wind beast. "Damn!" Mofan cursed in his heart as they finally arrived at the end of the arena after dashing away from the tornado. When he turned around and looked at the tornado still approaching them without any signs of stopping, he wanted to negotiate with Mu Nujiao again by giving her 70% of the resources, but she would not be able to hear him anymore due to the howling wind. "Woo!" The Spirit Wolf howled softly towards Mofan, signaling him to hide at the corner of the barrier. Before Mofan could react, the wolf had already turned around and stared at the approaching tornado with its glowing green eyes. How? The wolf raised its head and shot out 3 flying wind sand breaths towards the tornado. Its wind sand breath was a move that utilized the power of wind, and the wolf wanted to use its own wind magic to neutralize the wind disk tornado. However, the Spirit Wolf's magic was not strong enough to withstand an intermediate level wind spell. It was just like a kindergartner trying to shove an adult away. It barely did anything. Woo! Upon realizing its efforts were in vain, the Spirit Wolf let out a long howl. Before Mofan could give the wolf any other orders, it had already charged straight towards the tornado, attempting to withstand the vortex with its own body. "Spirit Wolf," murmured the stunned Mofan. Was the wolf trying to use its body to fight against the wind disk tornado? Mofan clearly remembered the day when the berserk one-eyed wolf, which was on the same level as a Spirit Wolf, failed to withstand intermediate level magic. Now, even if his Spirit Wolf survived, its bones would still be shattered into pieces after ramming into the tornado. Within the dust storm, the Spirit Wolf could not be seen clearly anymore, only a black figure moving faster and faster. In the end, Mofan clearly saw the figure of his wolf being hurled towards the center of the tornado. His Spirit Wolf was flung into the air after colliding with the tornado. Fortunately, its sacrifice was not in vain. The tornado finally stopped moving forward and the power of the wind decreased after the collision. At the back of the storm, Mu Nujiao quickly noticed the Spirit Wolf struggling in the air. Right after the tornado dispersed, the summoned beast fell towards the ground from 30 meters up in the air. The Spirit Wolf had already lost its balance. If it landed headfirst, it could be instantly lethal. Up! Mu Nujiao raised her hands and formed a gust of wind that buoyed the Spirit Wolf slightly, slowing its plummet and saving it from death. However, when the wolf landed on the ground, it still suffered a heavy injury which completely immobilized it. The wind disk tornado appeared in an instant, and disappeared in a split second as well. At the far end of the barrier, Mofan let out a relieved breath as soon as he saw the Spirit Wolf saved from death. "Thank you for your mercy, but I will not surrender without a fight," shouted Mofan as he stared at Mu Nujiao with a sharp gaze. Ever since the beginning, Mofan had deemed this lady to be a very dangerous opponent, and he was right. The Spirit Wolf had risked itself, squeezing out its remaining strength to neutralize the attack of its master's opponent. Mofan felt he must not let down his loyal summoned beast. "Show me your true strength," said Mu Nujiao. Mofan quickly returned his summoned beast back into the dimensional space so it could rest and heal. After all, the wolf had been fighting for him for a very long time, and this woman had to be dealt with personally. At the same time, without any delay, Mu Nujiao started forming another star atlas, clearly visible from the countless star paths appearing around her. "Not on my watch," shouted Mo Fan, who obviously did not want his opponent to have the chance to cast her spell. He raised his hand, and a violet star path was formed in an instant. Violet lightning started forming on top of Mo Fan's head. With a grasp and a hurl, the violet lightning shot straight across the arena and flew towards Mu Nujiao, who was halfway through forming her star atlas. Upon seeing the incoming lightning, Mu Nujiao inevitably had to avoid the attack, and as a result, the spell she was channeling was disrupted. Mu Nujiao had not seen that coming. She thought he would fight her with his intermediate magic. Instead, her opponent cancelled her spell channeling by using a basic level spell, which surprisingly proved to be quite efficient. The star paths quickly formed a lightning star atlas, pumping energy into the surroundings and infusing it right into Mo Fan. With energy surging within him, his hair standing on end, lightning sparking around his body, Mo Fan shouted and pointed his finger towards the skies, manipulating the raging lightning into coming down and turning into a horrifying lightning bolt. An intermediate tier lightning spell was formed, and thunderclouds appeared above Mu Nujiao. Hua! With an ear-piercing shriek around the arena, the thundercloud gained the attention of everyone. Violet lightning came rushing down from the clouds, tearing the area apart with relentless power, and struck towards Mu Nujiao mercilessly. Unlike the wind disk tornado, which first pumped out all the air around it to form a rampage, the lightning bolt was more straightforward. It simply absorbed enough energy before raining down from the skies. Thus, the lightning bolt might not sweep across the surroundings like the wind disk tornado, but once it struck someone precisely, there was a very high chance that the person would die on the spot under its horrendous power. Chapter End. Versatile Mage. Chapter 167 Forest of Kungao. The reason why the thunderclap was so strong was that it could destroy anything in a blink of an eye without leaving any traces behind, which was also why Teacher Gu Han had acted at once even when Bai Kang Feng had his magic equipment. In truth, the intermediate level lightning magic, thunderclap, was too ruthless. Even with the magic equipment, Bai Kang Feng would still probably be crushed in an instant. Thus, even when Bai Kang Feng was confident that he could repel Mo Fan's attack, Teacher Gu Han felt that there was no reason for him to risk being derelict of his duty. And now, Mu Nujiao was faced with the same thing experienced by Bai Kang Feng. As the thunderclap struck, one would suffer extreme injuries, if not death, if he or she failed to evade the devastating attack. It was also insufficient to possess defensive magic equipment, as the thunderclap might just shatter the magic equipment along with its owner. But this time, Gu Han stood aside calmly. He had already seen Mu Nujiao's defensive measures. Besides, from Gu Han's perception, Mu Nujiao was entirely out of that idiot Bai Kang Feng's league. Wind Trail, Drifting Shadow. Mu Nujiao, who was still moving slowly, suddenly shifted swiftly as soon as the thunderous storm shrouded the air above her. In the midst of the raging lightning, her curvaceous body could be seen moving agilely on the set-up wind trails, her clothes dancing around her from her rapid movement. The raging lightning went on a rampage in the arena, drilling out a huge hole in the ground with relentless power. But Mu Nujiao had already traveled 10 meters away from the spot. If the lightning star atlas was completed before the star trail was released, the thunderclap would definitely be an attack that could not be evaded. Too bad for Mo Fan. Mu Nujiao had already prepared herself for this attack, praised Gu Han in his heart as he nodded his appreciation. Ruthless and swift, that was the style of intermediate lightning magic. And judging from what Mu Nujiao had pulled off, she obviously had a certain amount of understanding of intermediate lightning magic, and so she set up her wind trails long ago. With that, all she had to do was wait until Mo Fan completed his spell and quickly shift her position away from his attack as soon as the thunderous cloud took shape. If she had moved slightly earlier, he would have been able to lock onto her again, and if she was too slow, the speed of her wind would be no match for the lightning. Hence, she chose a very precise moment and made use of her primary magic to evade Mo Fan's intermediate thunderclap. What an incredible woman! She actually dodged the thunderclap, thought the now shocked Mo Fan. Now, he had finally met a strong mage. Unlike those students who knew nothing more than just studying the moves and applying their knowledge without creativity and flexibility, Mu Nujiao had obviously been showered with countless battles. Those battles granted her quite a bit of knowledge on intermediate-tier magics. After all, being able to grasp the timing and location of the final point of the thunderclap was not something just anyone could do. Seems like you are going to lose. Using the wind trails she had cast, Mu Nujiao now stood at a place where Mo Fan's attacks could not reach. This time, she would not give Mo Fan even the slightest chance to cast another thunderclap. Really, if you use the wind disc tornado again, I will have already evaded it long before it reaches me, said Mo Fan as he looked at her. The wind disc tornado could cover a very huge area, but its speed was relatively slow. Hence, during the time it traveled from one end of the arena to the other, Mo Fan would have enough time to take measures against the tornado. Have I ever said that I was going to use any wind element magic? Replied Mu Nujiao as a bright and sweet smile blossomed on her face. The smile was so beautiful, but Mo Fan only felt immense danger coming from it. Forest of Kun Gao. Green star trails that resembled twisted vines appeared under the feet of Mu Nujiao. They quickly formed into a symbol that resembled nature, surging with condensed life force. She called out the name of her spell as if she was reciting a long-forgotten incantation while controlling the spirits of nature that danced around the nature totem. With a finger flick, she turned the enormous life force into an unattractive seed shrouded in green light. The seed dropped to the ground not far away from Mo Fan. In just an instant, everything changed when the seed burrowed into the floor. Something was emerging from the floor, and before Mo Fan could react, countless strange-looking trees, vines, and roots came charging out from the floor. They pushed aside the arena floor around them, and what was even more terrifying was that they all matured at a visible speed. Some even twined together before they spawned more seeds that quickly ripped open into even more branches and vines, while some continued spreading across their surroundings before they formed an area filled with only plants. A few seconds ago, this area was filled with sand, rocks, and other debris. But now, this area was invaded by these plants that gave off a presence like a massive monster invading a place in search of something. Clearly, these plants possessed the ability to detect life force. They sensed Mo Fan and circled around him as they grew unbridledly. Whenever Mo Fan ran away, these plants would not stop him but instead quickly grew into a thick vine forest that slowly cut off his path. Chapter N. Versatile Mage. Chapter 168. You lost. This Mu Nujiao is so strong, exclaimed the girl with the ponytail in awe, then asked again, Mo Fan is going to lose, right? The forest of Kun Gao is practically impossible to escape from. But that's not what I think, disagreed Zhu Zhaoting with a shake of his head. Perhaps your friend still has some trick up his sleeves. Is that possible? Asked the girl again. However, Zhu Zhaoting did not answer her question and merely stared closely at the jungle that grew around Mo Fan like a prison. So, marvelous. Yeah. This goddess is about to defeat this evil demon. We almost lost all our resources because of him. From now on, she will be my one and only goddess. Upon seeing this, all the new students immediately felt immense gratitude and admiration for Mu Nujiao. If not for her, their resources would have been stolen by Mo Fan. A lady who was extremely beautiful yet incapable of anything would only bring disaster. But a lady who was both pretty and capable at the same time would be seen as a kind, powerful, and strong goddess who could rescue her people from crisis. When everything calmed down after the prison made of plant life fully emerged, Mu Nujiao clenched her fist and walked slowly toward the prison. She too firmly believed that Mo Fan would not be able to turn the situation around. Mo Fan had already depleted all his summoner abilities, and if he had an even stronger summoned beast, he would have brought it out long ago. At this time, not even his lightning magic would be able to help him escape from the imprisonment of the Forest of Kun. He had lost the fight. In just a moment, Mu Nujiao had drawn close to the border of the Forest of Kun. The Forest of Kun possessed no offensive capabilities, so Mu Nujiao would have to get close enough and ask Mo Fan to surrender. If Mo Fan was stubborn, she would not mind giving him a tornado and letting him have a taste of the excitement of jumping down from a tall building without any safety measures. Through the tiny gaps in the plants, she started searching for the trapped Mo Fan. To her dismay, just when she was about to say something, she shockingly discovered that there was no sign of Mo Fan at all. How? Shock immediately replaced Mu Nujiao's confidence. Be it any type of position-shifting skills, no one would easily escape from the imprisonment of the Forest of Kun. These plants tracked the target person by sensing the person's life force as they grew. Thus, even if it was wind trail, earth burrow, or other magic equipment, no one would be able to escape easily. This was also why Mu Nujiao was confident that Mo Fan could not escape, which led her to walk up to where she was now standing confidently. She had not expected that Mo Fan would not be found within the jail made up of countless plants. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. You lost, said a voice with a very deep tone from the forest on the other side. Extremely shocked, Mu Nujiao looked in that direction, only to find Mo Fan walking out from the shadows of the plants. He did not walk out from the forest, but from the shadows of the plants. Even with her incredibly strong senses, Mo Fan still managed to walk away unscathed by moving within the shadows. In truth, no one would be able to escape from the imprisonment of the Forest of Kun, except when it came to shadow element magic. With all the tall trees, thick vines, and large leaves, shadows were everywhere around the Forest of Kun. This provided a huge area for shadow element mages to roam freely. Be it the saturated vines or branches, none of them would be able to trap a shadow that could move freely. Shadow element. How is it possible that you possess magic of the shadow element? Exclaimed Mu Nujiao, nearly falling as she stared at him in disbelief. Right now, she dared not move at all, not to mention cast any more spells. Mo Fan was dangerously close to her, and he even had a slithering lightning serpent in his hand. At this range, there would be no time for her to react, or even use any magic equipment. This has nothing to do with you. Anyhow, you have already lost this battle, stated Mo Fan, as the lightning serpent in his hand grew more and more ferocious, and seemed like it would strike at any moment. Anger rose in Mu Nujiao's eyes. Shadow element. Is he trying to defy everything I know about magic? This man clearly displayed both summoning and lightning element magic. So why does he also have a third element's power? Is he an advanced mage? Impossible. Definitely impossible. No one could reach the advanced level at such a young age, not even those from the magic court. With no options left, Mu Nujiao stood there as she bit her lips. Before she gave up, she briefly thought of continuing to fight this guy with her magic equipment, but in the end she discarded that foolish idea. Chapter End. Versatile Mage. Chapter 169 Overdosing on Resources. A nightmare fell upon the new students from the other schools. They had no time to pay attention to how Mo Fan had escaped from the Forest of Kun's imprisonment. Dean Xiao, what do we do now? Asked the other deans. Can't you see that chaos has overwhelmed the crowd? Although they had not figured out exactly how Mo Fan escaped, what had happened right before them was something that had not occurred in the past 10 years. It was obvious that this scene was going to be even more difficult to handle. Why don't we convince Mo Fan to give up? This is getting out of hand, said Zheng Zhenghua. Previously, they did not think that this would be possible, so they listened to Dean Xiao obediently. Who would have thought that rather than just being a competent summoner mage, Mo Fan was also a mage that was able to manipulate intermediate tier lightning element magic. Apart from that, this guy must have hidden a portion of his true strength away, or his winning streak would have been terminated by Mu Nujiao, as she was basically invincible among the new students. Rules are rules. They are not to be broken, replied Dean Xiao with a cold humph as he rejected Zhou Zhenghua's suggestion. With a frown, Dean Xiao looked at the messy situation and let out a loud shout. His shout echoed throughout the arena and forced everyone to shut up. Enough, this marks the end of the competition. The resources for this current batch of newcomers will be placed under the summoning element, announced Dean Xiao with no hesitation. Dean Xiao, ellipsis quote. Without giving any chances for the others to speak, Dean Xiao said coldly, in truth, the resources given to you this semester are more than enough for all of you. Right now, what all of you couldn't accept is not that your resources are gone, you just couldn't accept that the resources are being given to one person. Why didn't a single one of you jump out and refute the suggestion about the resources of the summoning element being distributed to the others if they defeated less than 100 students? Was it because of the mere 7 students of the summoning element? Was it because they couldn't protest like uncivilized barbarians like all of you are because of their small numbers? Have you all forgotten what I said during the opening ceremony? Have you all forgotten how the rules of how our school cultivate mages? This has never happened throughout the years, and this has proved that we have always been the same for so long without any changes, especially among the new students. Today, I am more than happy that someone finally broke this previously unchanged situation. He might not be able to change the world yet, but this is a good start. Dean Xiao's angry and disappointed words struck everyone like raging thunder. Upon hearing his words, those older students who were cultivating in the Pearl Institution all lowered their heads and dared not mutter any more words, let alone the newcomers. If they had disagreed with this before everything started, Dean Xiao would have disregarded the idea of letting Mo Fan get all the resources right now. Why did they wait until Mo Fan triumphed against all odds and only started to protest after all of their own profits were taken away by someone else? If the Pearl Institution only took in students like those guys, then Dean Xiao would be even more willing to donate these resources to those with greater ambitions and willpower who had failed to enter the association, in order to fully utilize them. At least, those mages out there now knew that the resources were hard to get. At this time, a man with determination and pride stood up and questioned Dean Xiao loudly. Dean Xiao, what you said is right, but have you ever considered people like us who come from a poor family? We greatly depend on the resources given by the school to cultivate. We have to compete with those rich students that possess a greater amount of resources, and they only paid a tiny bit of effort for the resources they have. Each and every portion of resources means a lot to poor students like me. Facing this question, Dean Xiao took down his glasses and glanced at this young man in the audience. Dean Xiao was not irritated at all as he answered, because this is a school, you had the chance to ask a foolish question like this. You think Mo Fan was born with a golden spoon in his mouth, you think he came from a rich and noble family, which is why he reached the intermediate level much earlier than you all, correct? Yes, replied the young student. Fine, I did not want to bring this up, but since you have questioned me about this on behalf of the many mages that come from average families, then I will tell you, this student that plundered all of your resources came from Bo City. Replied Dean Xiao angrily. Bo City, that Bo City that was in the news about a year ago. The tragedy that happened in Bo City would never be forgotten. According to the statistics, there were more than 100,000 casualties. That day was a day where the blood shed was enough to form rivers. He came from an average family, with average resources, and whatever he had at that time, were probably even worse than the majority of you. I think I've said enough, replied Dean Xiao as he sighed. Everyone went quiet immediately upon Dean Xiao's reply. That student looked at Mo Fan, who was at the center of the arena, in disbelief. How was it even possible that someone at his age without any resources could advance into the intermediate level? How was that possible? Mu Nujiao also looked at the man who defeated her, shocked. In truth, She had taken Mo Fan as one of the strongest disciples of a large faction out there, but who would have thought that he was actually just a nobody from Bo City? No wonder he didn't use any magic equipment. He probably didn't even own one. In the battles between the disciples of the rich and noble families, the use of magic equipment was even more frequent than magic casting. Mu Nu Zhao had thought that her opponent did not use any because he did not want to show off his wealth, just like her. Dean Xiao, this is all unnecessary attention. Is it really alright for you to expose my information just like that? How am I supposed to chase after the beautiful ladies of the rich after this? Asked a speechless Mo Fan. Haha, I was very angry, and since a great example like you came by very handily, I took this chance. Speechless, Mo Fan shut his mouth. It is very easy to garner hostile attention after becoming the brilliant kid next door that outperformed everyone. Sigh. Fine, so be it. Since I robbed everyone of their resources, no one from the new students will like me anymore. Mo Fan believed that the students who were admitted to Pearl Institute were all people with good morals. However, he would carry a silver needle whenever he went to the cafeteria, just in case. Still, after the competition ended, Mo Fan couldn't stop feeling great. Although the resources were not the core resources given to the students by the institution, just with this amount, he was still happily overwhelmed. In the space of 1 second, he had gone from being one of the poor to one of the rich. Chapter End. Versatile Mage. Chapter 170 Strategy. The remaining 6 people from the summoning school already regarded Mo Fan as a god. They knew their capabilities and obediently let Mo Fan claim all that he had obtained, while they only took what belonged to them. Whether or not Jiang Yunming meant it, there was no reason for Mo Fan to share the resources with the 6 of them. He had poured in a considerable and desperate effort for the resources, despite knowing that he would make himself a public enemy of the entire school. Dean Xiao mentioned that he will convert all public resources into my own cultivation resources. I wonder how much they will be. Will I be able to obtain resources for the evolution of the spirit wolf? Said Mo Fan softly to himself. Mo Fan had a strong feeling that if the spirit wolf was able to advance into the warrior class, he would be unstoppable among those at his level, and he might even be able to challenge those at a higher level. Mo Fan still clearly remembered the time where he saw a warrior class monster himself. He could still recall the impact and the awe brought by the warrior class 3-eyed demon wolf when it pounced out from the building out of nowhere. After experiencing the huge incidents that happened in the competition, there was a rapid change in his daily life. First of all, there were only 3 people left in his dormitory. The other 2 roommates of Mo Fan, who seemed to be afraid of being dragged into the chaos stirred up by Mo Fan, had quickly submitted an application requesting to move into another dormitory. Thus, only Mo Fan, Zhang Pinggu, and Zhao Manyan remained in the same dormitory. Zhang Pinggu now admired Mo Fan so much that he had turned into a fanboy, while Zhao Manyan, on the other hand, reacted much more normally. However, one of his favorite questions for Mo Fan was now. Since you fought with Mu Nu Zhao before, can you tell if she is a C or D cup? Mo Fan was extremely speechless at his question. How could he be able to do precise measurements during a fight, not to mention such an intense contest with Mu Nu Zhao? But judging from what he saw, perhaps she had a D cup. There would be quite some time until Mo Fan could access the resources granted to him because of some procedures. But as someone who was not in a hurry, he patiently waited while he kept on training himself. Time passed quickly, and 1 month had gone by since the competition. The discussions about the competition were gradually replaced by some other fresh news, but occasionally, Mo Fan could still hear Zhang Pinggu keep on talking about a few newly appeared strong competitors. One of them was said to be a student that enrolled at the school quite late, but that student might possess strength greater than Mo Fan's. This was inevitable. Mo Fan had made himself a public enemy of the entire school. Thus, even though everyone knew that he was strong, they were all unwilling to acknowledge him as the strongest in the school. As a result, They were naturally more fond of other individuals who possessed greater strength at the same level. And since none of them had fought Mo Fan, everyone just assumed that they were stronger than him. Hey, did you guys know that Mu Nujiao did something that caused the entire school to view her as a goddess? Said Zhang Pinggu as he stormed into the dormitory while both Mo Fan and Zhao Mannion were meditating, lazy to attend classes. Zhao Mannion opened his eyes first when he heard the name of Mu Nujiao. He had great interest in her and would literally stop anything he was doing, even in the midst of advancing to the next level. Zhang Pinggu then continued, Mu Nujiao took on the responsibilities for what happened in the competition and she donated an equivalent amount of resources won by Mo Fan to everyone in the school under the name of the Mu family. This time, Mo Fan opened his eyes as well. Why is she doing this? Asked Mo Fan in surprise. Isn't she being way too generous? The responsibility of losing the resources was not on her, so why was she trying to compensate all of the new students for their losses? Yeah, I agree, it was unexpected. Not even the school expected her to do this. It's a total blessing from the goddess, replied Zhang Pinggu in great excitement. Zhao Mannion thought for a while and soon understood the reason behind Mu Nujiao's seemingly irrational move. It's just a kind of strategy, said Zhao Mannion. How so? Asked Mo Fan. The public resources were a great deal of wealth that even a financially well-capitalized aristocratic family would not be able to afford to spend so casually. Each year, every major aristocratic family spends a great deal of resources to recruit graduate and undergraduate students from prestigious schools. For the Mu family, they were merely doing this earlier this year in an attempt to gain the favor of the freshmen. Supposedly, the school normally does not allow this to happen, but after losing such a huge amount of public resources, the school silently approved it and allowed Mu Nujiao to do as she pleased, explained Zhao Mannion. But it's still way too costly just for a good reputation. And I wonder if the people will still side with the Mu family when they are offered a better prospect in the future, replied Zhang Pinggu. Gold can be nothing for a wealthy person with a luxurious life. However, when you offer a bowl of rice to a person who is starving to death, he will never forget your generosity until the end of his life. The Mu family is being smart by taking the overall situation into consideration to draw people to their side. Perhaps not everyone, or only a minority, will join the Mu family in the future, but they have earned themselves a good reputation among the entire school, Zhao Mannion pointed out bluntly. Zhang Pinggu sniffled. To be frank, if Zhao Mannion had not pointed this out, he would have really thought that Mu Nujiao was doing this out of guilt, thus accepting her as a goddess with a pure and kind heart. Mo Fan looked at Zhao Mannion with a little surprise. Well, he really seems to know well about all these stratagems. He must have been mixing around with aristocratic families all this while, or he wouldn't be able to see through Mu Nujiao's motive, Mo Fan thought. Are you telling me that under her pure and pretty-looking facade lies a heart full of schemes? I truly admire her as my goddess, said Zhang Pinggu impetuously. The decision wasn't really on her. The Mu family was the one who came up with this idea after they were told that Mu Nujiao lost all the resources. And as someone who felt extremely guilty for losing everything to Mo Fan, Mu Nujiao would definitely accept this proposal. It was a win-win situation, explained Zhao Mannion again. Oh, that's great. You almost ruined the image of the dream girl in my heart, said Zhang Pinggu with relief. Mo Fan too, was filled with all sorts of feelings today. It seemed like not all aristocratic families blindly abused their power after all. A true powerful family knew very well the benefits and importance of maintaining their image and reputation in order to recruit potential magicians. Initially, it was a bad thing for the Mu family when Mu Nujiao lost the battle and thus lost everyone's resources. But the situation quickly turned around, and they made use of the previously bad situation to benefit themselves. The Mu family had gained a profound advantage, and it would be much harder for the other aristocratic families to compete with them in the future. By the way, how did you escape from that intermediate level plant magic? The forest was thick, None of us were able to see what exactly happened there. What tricks did you use? Zhang Pinggu asked Mo Fan curiously. The entire school will know in the twinkling of an eye if he tells you. You big blabbermouth, replied Zhao Mannion. Mo Fan couldn't agree more, so he just nodded silently. There was no way he would simply reveal his trump cards to anyone. Tell me quietly. I promise I will keep the secret for you, Zhao Mannion said to Mo Fan with a filthy look and a raised eyebrow. Mo Fan was stunned for a moment and immediately reacted to Zhao Mannion with 2 words. Piss off. Chapter end. Please guys like, comment, share, and subscribe.